Chair recognizes gentleman from Woodford 56 for discussion. Okay. Now, yes, I knew you had a little different situation there, gentleman from Jefferson 33. It's the reason I thought you had. Gentleman from Jefferson 33, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask the clerk to call floor amendment number 1.
Clerk, please report floor amendment 1.
The man print a copy of Senate Bill 3, House Floor Amendment 1.
Gentleman from Jefferson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, before we kill any bad bill, we ought to at least try to make it better before we vote against it. And in that vein, I'm calling this floor amendment, which is actually a piggyback. Oh, yes. From 1992, 1990, 1988, and 1986, which I don't think the House rules prohibit yet. 4 times the House has passed what is the substance of this amendment and didn't quite make it through the Senate. Ran out of time, I'm sure. But this amendment, in a few short paragraphs, is going to bring the insurance industry, belatedly, it's too late for the 20th century, we're going to bring them into the 21st century and eliminate race discrimination, gender discrimination, thank you, gentleman from Christian, age discrimination, neighborhood discrimination, all those things that insurance companies use to arbitrarily assess you an exorbitant rate of insurance for your car when you go into that little office of theirs and try to procure car insurance, which, as you know, in this state is the law. You have to have insurance to operate a motor vehicle on our highways and byways. So it's tantamount to a tax, and taxes ought to be applied fairly. So I believe in the rather quaint notion that you ought to be assessed a premium on your car insurance. It is germane, by the way, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much. You ought to be...
Please give the gentleman your attention.
Thank you so much. You ought to be judged on your ability to drive a car. It's a rather novel view, but I think that is the way that you ought to be able to get car insurance. Now, this is the law already in, at last count, 6 states, which is a groundswell, and it's operating fine. Just talked to him last week, and it's working very well. It's amazing what you can do when you're not allowed to discriminate on the basis of race, sex, marital status, where you live, or how old you are. So I move for passage of the amendment. Ask for a roll call vote.
There seems to be a few people who want to discuss the merits of that amendment, starting with the gentleman from Webster 12, the resident insurance.
I'm shocked.
Gentleman from Webster.
Mr. Speaker, could you, point of order,
State your point.
could I ask you to rule on whether or not this is germane?
Well, it's close. It's close.
I got the proof.
I'm going to rule that it is. Gentleman from Webster.
Well, considering that the bill is talking about the coverage and the possession of insurance, and this is talking about rating of insurance, but I guess that's people don't understand the differences of insurance. All I have to say is this is House Bill 250. What we did in the health insurance market, we're going to now do to the auto insurance market. This is community rating. So if you, I've got a 17-year-old son. It may be good for me to vote for this, but some of you who've got your kids already grown, you might want to vote against it. So it's a bad amendment.
Chair recognizes gentleman from Grant 61 to talk about the bad amendment.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
State your point.
I think if this pig is 6 years old, it probably is a hog by now.
Chair recognizes gentleman from Davis 14 for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I first saw this bill, I didn't know if it would be possible to make it worse, but I'd like to compliment the gentleman from Jefferson 33 because if we pass this amendment, he will have succeeded in making it worse. Will the gentleman from Jefferson 33 yield to a question?
He will yield. Gentleman
Yes,
from
sir.
Davis.
If it's a legitimate question now,
Yes, gentleman from Davis, he'll yield.
Gentlemen, I noticed that you say in here that everybody gets charged the same. I guess we're going to
No, it
legislate
doesn't
a
say
free
that.
lunch.
Yeah, but-
If I may finish my question.
Gentleman from Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I noticed everybody gets charged the same, except that we can charge differential rates based on the insured's driving record. I have had 4 and 5 teenagers driving at the same time, and believe me, nobody wants insurance rate relief more than I do. I'm sure there are a few in here that might share that notion. However, if we want insurers to be able to offer insurance, isn't it true, gentlemen, that teenagers are charged higher rates not because they have already had accidents, but because we know there are merely rolling accidents waiting to happen? So what you have here is we can't charge a teenager more until after they've had the accident. Is that true?
Au contraire, gentleman from Davis. Let me try to
Gentleman
explain
from Jefferson.
very simple little amendment. First of all, you're exactly correct. That's what the insurance industry does now. They stereotype people. You walk into their office, oh, you're old, or you're a young kid, or you're not married. Oh, you know, the calculators burn up with figuring out that premium, okay? And that has nothing, zero, to do with how that person drives the car, what their gender is, whether or not they're married, what neighborhood they live in, how old they are, etc. Now, I have allowed them to discriminate for 2 years until the person who is 16 or 20 or 30, whenever they start to drive, have established a driving record. That's the way it works in these 6 other states. I submit to you that as a matter of public policy, that it ought to be the position of the General Assembly that our Kentuckians are judged as individuals and their own driving record is assessed, and not how old they are, whether or not they're married, what race they are, what neighborhood they live in, which has nothing, absolutely nothing to do with how they drive a car.